The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Karam Yoga, Chapter 2. Each is great in his own place. Part 2. I once met a man in my country whom I had known before as very stupid and dull person who knew nothing and had not the desire to know anything. He was living a life of a brute. He asked me what he should do to know God, how he was to get free. I asked him, "Can you tell a lie?" "No," he replied. "Then you must learn to do so. It is better to tell a lie than to be a brute or a log of wood. You are inactive. You have not reached the highest state, which is beyond all actions, calm and serene. You are too dull to do even something wicked." That was an extreme case. Of course, and I was joking with him. But what I meant was that a man must be active in order to pass to activity, from activity to perfect calmness. Inactivity should be avoided by all means. Activity always means resistance. Resist all evils, mental and physical. And when you have succeeded in resisting, then will calmness come. It is very easy to say, "Hate nobody, resist not evil." But we know what that kind of generally means in practice. When the eyes of society are turned towards us, we may make a show of non resistance, but in our hearts, it is canker all the time. We feel the utter want of the calm of non resistance. We feel that it would be better for us to resist. If you desire wealth and know at the same time that the whole world regards him who aims at wealth as a very wicked man, you perhaps will not dare to plunge into the struggle for wealth. Yet your mind will be running day and night after money. This is hypocrisy and will serve no purpose. Plunge into the world, and then after a time when you have suffered and enjoyed all that is in it, will renunciation come. Then will calmness come. So fulfill your desire for power and everything else, and after you have fulfilled the desire, will come the time when you know that they are all very little things. But until you have fulfilled this desire, until you have passed through that activity, it is impossible for you to come to the state of calmness, serenity, and self surrender. These ideas of serenity and renunciation have been preached for thousands of years. Everybody has heard of them from childhood, and yet we see very few in the world who have really reached that stage. I do not know if I have seen 20 persons in my life who are really calm and non resisting, and I have traveled over half of the world. Every man should take up his own ideal and endeavor to accomplish it. That is a surer way of progress than taking up another man's ideals, which he can never hope to accomplish. For instance, we take a child and at once give him the task of walking 20 miles. Either the little one dies, or one in 1,000, exhausted, crawls the 20 miles to reach the end, exhausted and half dead. That is like what we generally try to do with the world. All the men and women in any society are not of the same mind. They are not of the same capacity or the same power to do things, and they have different ideals. So we have no right to sneer at any ideal. Let everyone do the best he can for realizing his own ideal, nor is it right that I should be judged by your standard or you by mine. The apple tree should not be judged by the standard of the oak, nor the oak by that of the apple. To judge the apple tree, you must take the apple standard, and for the oak, its own standard. Until in variety, unity in variety is the plan of creation. However, men and women may vary individually. There is unity in the background. The different individual characters and classes of men and women are natural variations in creation. Hence, we ought not to judge them by the same standard or put the same ideal before them. Such a course creates only an unnatural struggle, and the result is that man begins to hate himself and is hindered from becoming religious and good. Our duty is to encourage everyone in his struggle to live up to his own highest ideal and strive at the same time to make the ideal as near as possible to the truth. In the Hindu system of morality, we find that this fact has been recognized from the very ancient times, and in their scriptures and books on ethics, different rules are laid down for different classes of men: the householder, the sannyasi, the man who has renounced the world, and the student. The life of every individual, according to the Hindu scriptures, has a peculiar duty apart from what belongs in common to universal humanity. The Hindu begins life as a student, then he marries and becomes a householder. In old age he retires, and lastly he gives up the world and becomes a sannyasi. To each of these stages of life, certain duties are attached. No one of these stages is intrinsically superior to the other. The life of the married man is quite as great as that of the celibate who has devoted himself to religious work. The scavenger in the street is quite as great and glorious as the king on his throne. Take him off his throne, make him do the work of the scavenger, and see how he fares. Take up the scavenger and see how he will rule. It is therefore useless to say that the man who lives out of the world is greater than the man who lives in the world. It is much more difficult to live in the world and worship God than to give it up and live a free and easy life. The 4 stages of life in India have in later times been reduced to 2, that of the householder and that of the monk. The householder marries and carries on his duties as a citizen, and the duty of the other is to devote his energies wholly to religion, to preach and to worship God. I shall read to you a few passages from the Maha-Nirvana Tantra, which treats of this subject, and you will see that it is very difficult task for a man to be a householder and perform all his duties perfectly. The householder should be devoted to God. The knowledge of God should be his goal of life. Yet, he must work constantly, perform all his duties. He must give up the fruits of his actions to God. It is the most difficult thing in this world to work and not to care for the result. To help a man and never think that he ought to be grateful. To do some good work and at the same time never look to see whether it brings you name or fame or nothing at all. Even the most arrant coward becomes brave when the world praises him. A fool can do heroic deeds when the world praises him. A fool can do heroic deeds when the appropriation of society is upon him. But for a man to constantly do good without caring for the approbation of his fellow man is indeed the highest sacrifice a man can perform. The great duty of the householder is to earn a living, but he must take care that he does not do it by telling lies or by cheating or by robbing others. And he must remember that his life is for the service of God and the service of the poor. Knowing that mother and father are the visible representatives of God, the householder always and by all means must please them. If the mother is pleased and the father is pleased, then God is pleased with such man. That child is really a good child who never speaks harsh words to his parents. Before parents, one must not utter jokes, must not show restlessness, must not show anger or temper. Before mother or father, a child must bow down low and stand up in their presence, and must not take a seat until they order him to sit. If the householder has food and drink and clothes without first seeing that his mother and his father, his children, his wife, and the poor are supplied, he is committing a sin. The mother and the father are the causes of this body. So man must undergo 1,000 troubles in order to do good to them. Even so is his duty to his wife. No man should scold his wife, and he must always maintain her as if she were his own mother. And even when he is in the greatest of difficulties and troubles, he must not show anger towards his wife. He who thinks of another woman besides his wife, if he touches her even with his mind, that man goes to dark hell. Before women, he must not talk improper language and never brag of his own powers. He must not say that I have done this and I have done that. The householder must always please his wife with money, clothes, love, faith, and words like nectar, and never do anything to disturb her. That man who has succeeded in getting the love of a chaste wife has succeeded in his religion and has all the virtues. The following are the duties towards children. A son should be lovingly reared up to his 4th year. He should be educated till he is 16. When he is 20 years of age, he should be employed in some work. He should then be treated affectionately by his father as his equal. Exactly in the same manner, the daughter should be brought up and should be educated with the greatest care. And when she marries, the father ought to give her jewels and wealth. Then the duty of man is towards his brothers and his sisters, and towards the children of his brothers and sisters, if they are poor, and towards his other relatives, his friends and his servants. Then his duties are towards the people of the same village and the poor, and any one that comes to him for help. Having sufficient means, if the householder does not take care to give to his relatives and to the poor, know him to be only a brute. He is not a human being. Excessive attachment to food, clothes, and tending of the body and dressing of the hair should be avoided. The householder must be pure in heart and clean in body, always active and ready for work.